Hello, this is Christine again, and today I'm going to show you how to make a compact small dahlia with handmade stamens, which are not as slow and hard to make as you think, and they're fantastic to personalize your flowers and make them look more natural and less uniform. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you know that I always get up to these tricks to try to make your flowers look amazing. So this is the middle to stop your flower head to falling off from the wire if you're new to sugar flowers, and the important bit here is to keep your head as perpendicular to the wire itself as possible, which is why I'm fiddling with it for so long. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use a cold porcelain to demo this flower. For those of you who are new to my channel, again, cold porcelain is very similar to sugar paste. Although it's non-edible, it's not toxic, it's very difficult to break, which is brilliant for transportation and arranging the flowers and rearranging them later, maybe for wedding fair demos and all the rest of it, as well as for your customers to keep. And also it pretty much lasts your lifetime. So I'm going to link up a video on differences between the two pastes down below, as well as my current best recipe on how to make cold porcelain by yourself. So this is a good trick on making a natural little middle for your flowers. You could make it out of cold porcelain or sugar, it looks more or less the same. For those of you who are new to my channel, by the way, I just want to encourage you to subscribe for my weekly videos on how to make really pretty and really professional looking sugar flowers of all kinds, and I'm also planning on some new additions as well. So watch this space, subscribe, and make sure you hit the bell button not to miss any updates. And back talking about the stamens, I must admit I never quite got on with using man-made ones, and the ones that you buy in shops, because they kind of never sit at the right angle around the base and they all look a bit the same, and then you go on Instagram and you have beautiful flowers but the middles look the same. So I'm going to try to make some stamens by myself and see if I could play around with that as well. So watch the space. But I don't know, what do you think about stamens? Do you use your own? Do you make the stamens, or do you have any nice tricks to kind of tame the shop made stamens and how to customize them to make them look a little bit of each? Those of you who are comfortable with working and manipulating and customizing shop-bought stamens, please drop a line below in comments for me or anyone who is not very comfortable with shop-bought stamens, because I certainly am not at this point in time. Now I'm rolling out my cold porcelain, and this is just a very even rollout for where you don't need to wire it, because with cold porcelain you very often don't need to wire what with sugar you would. Or you will wire it, but in a certain special way that is only really very good for cold porcelain and not so much for sugar paste. You will see what I mean in a minute. And now I'm just going to use cutters to cut it out. Now if you're working with sugar paste, it's a lot easier. Now see, I've used Petal Base, which is sugar medium, but it really works nicely with cold porcelain. Just a little tip for those of you who haven't used it for cold porcelain. And here I have one side of it thicker, as you could see, and that is because I'm going to show you two different ways of wiring these lovely little petals. So if you're working with sugar, just use a bit of petal base or corn flour or icing sugar and just roll it out on the board. And this is another way of rolling either of the two pastes with a thick region in the middle, and then you could just wire the middle. It's quite a rough way of doing it. If you want to do something for competition, etc., you need to pay more attention for the way you wire petals in each medium. But in this video I'm trying to do a bit of a symbiosis of all things wiring and tips and fine detail, a bit of that, and the whole technique and composition of the flower and all the rest of it. So this tutorial, as most of my tutorials, is a bit of a corner shop on with everything included on how to make the best possible flower with just pretty much watching one video. So yeah, for fine details or maybe I'll do a separate video one of those days. So as you could see, you just shape your flower very nicely. It's easy to do it in cold porcelain than it is in Gumpaste, because it kind of tends to stay in shape easy. And as I said before, if you dry it like this, you could just add some glue and stick it to the middle, and you won't need to wire it. If it was in cold porcelain, as this paste is, in sugar, it would just be very fragile. It's doable, but very fragile and not very flexible. You wouldn't be able to kind of adjust your petals a lot, and arranging them would be a little bit difficult. So you really just need to have both skills, as far as I'm concerned, and just pick and mix as you need them. So here my petals are a little bit thin throughout, so this is a surface. I'm just pretty much add the wire on the surface, and then I pinch the bottom together, and this won't work for many flowers because obviously not all petals are pinched, but if it works, if there is an option, then it's always a good idea to explore that option if you need to. So that's the first method. For those of you who always work with sugar, what do you make of it? Can you see the difference? Can you pick up on difference between cold porcelain and sugar, just without watching my other video on that? It's more pliable, isn't it? It has got its own interesting little characteristics. So anyway, this is another way of doing it, still not the traditional wiring, and you just wire it from the bottom and then pinch it at the top. And actually I think that might work with gum paste as well. Certainly if you hate wiring flowers, you should perhaps try this. It may not work, I might experiment and report on it. But obviously with particular things like this, I'm a little bit worried that it's not going to do very well in search results and in terms of viewings, which is why I might just wait till my audience is bigger and more people are just bell subscribers, the ones that know when my videos come out and kind of watch them regularly. But while I'm on the subject of regular viewers, I am so grateful to all of you who just come back and watch my videos straight away, and then I publish it, and unlike before, I kind of see views, a regular amount of views coming in straight away. And thank you guys. I know it's those of you who just come back and watch it over and over again, make comments, and make my channel live and live and kicking. So thank you very much for that. Okay, so now I have small leaves and the big leaves. They're pretty much dried, and with cold porcelain they tend to shrink a little bit and go a shade darker, so that's something to bear in mind. I always cover all my petal stems with flower tape. It's just easier to keep them in place and arrange them before final wiring. Just one of my favorite tricks actually. Now I've looked at the picture that I'm going to copy, and so I've picked up the shades that I think would go into it, and then I kind of had to play around on samples, so the back of the petals, until I chose the ones that I wanted to use. I'm going to try and remember to put the shades that I've actually used in the description below. And when I shade, I use the same techniques for cold porcelain as I use for sugar, and they are to have the prominent middle where the light gets the most off in nature, and then all the nooks and crannies and the edges, they tend to be less bright because the light less of a light gets in there. That tends to be the general rule for me. And then I kind of layer it layer by layer, try not to chunk it up, and I tend to really try to blend my powders quite well as well, and just do it in little chunks. Don't bang on too much of the dust straight away, because it's a lot easier to add it bit by bit than actually to remove it afterwards, even though you could try to neutralize it with white powder or yellow powder in this case, etc. So when I'm done with dusting, this is the back, I could actually at the very end I could add a bit of an accent with very bright color, just like here, and then I'm going to start assembling my little dahlia. I'm not even sure what's it called, but as you could see here, I've edited out the video, but I've colored in, I've put a bit of dust in the middle as well. I was dusting the middle and just looking what it looks like next to the petals until I realized that it was quite nice to have the whole thing dusted. So as you could see here, my flower is nearly assembled or fully assembled, and I'm just adding the final touches of highlights. Could be bright yellow or bright pink or something else completely, down to your taste really, and your idea of what ties in with the rest of your bouquet sometimes as well. That could be a nice way to tie the whole thing up in a nice little composition. And here the flower is nearly ready now. As you could see on that picture, is the itself is a nice little small dahlia. You could keep working on it, on this dahlia, adding alternating petals around and around until you end up with a very popular large dahlia, but I'm not going to go into it or in this tutorial. But yeah, the option is there. You could just keep adding on. If I wanted to continue with this dahlia to make it into a larger one, I would use the larger of the two cutters and would add petals, alternating them around layer by layer, and the lower the layer is tied into the stem, the more it would kind of fall into the round shape. I hope that makes sense. And again, thank you very much for everyone who chose to watch my video. I see you again next Thursday with another brand new tutorial. Christina Wallace here, Cake Philosophy. Have a lovely weekend.